For this project, I'm starting with 4 pieces of 18 gauge round soft copper wire. They're all cut to 13 inches long, and I've already rolled them straight with my rolling pin after I cut them off the spool. My stone is a beautiful synthetic sunstone, and it measures 1 inch by about 3/4 inch wide, 1 inch long and 3/4 inch wide. That's 26 millimeter by 18 millimeter. And it's probably about, I'd say 3 millimeter thick, maybe 4. I'm going to use several feet of 28 gauge copper wire, so you can have about 8 feet on hand. I just have my little project spool here, and this is real handy. You can have an assortment of round metal copper beads or whatever gemstone beads you think complement your main cabochon, and some jump rings, but I'll show us how to make some as well. I'm going to have 20 inches of cable chain as well, ready for when we finish the project. You can have Rollo chain, any kind of chain, Figaro chain, but you want to make sure that you have a link that is open so that you can insert the jump ring. Alright, to get started, I'm going to lay my 4 round wires down on my measure. They're all cut to 13 inches long. And I'm going to take a Sharpie marker and I'm going to mark the center of the wires. So that would be 6.5 inches, so that's this mark right here. I'm just going to make a nice thick mark. Get more on a line here. Okay, so you can see that. My blue line is 12 inches, so this would be 13. So this is 6.5. And I'll mark a 1/4 inch out, and a 1/4 inch out, and then another 1/4 inch out, and another 1/4 inch out. Okay, a little trick I do, because these are round wires and when we work with them they're going to roll a little bit. So I go ahead and roll my whole stack of wires and I remark all of these lines so that I have a mark all the way around these wires. And roll it one more time. Doesn't have to be super exact. It helps us keep an eyeball of where we are. But now when I go to weave, no matter what side of the wire I'm facing, I can see my marks. Okay? Perfect. We'll take one of these wires and you'll grab a flat nose plier. This is a great plier. It's 2 millimeter flat nose. Alright, I'm going to take one of these wires and I'm going to go to the center mark. I'll position my plier right beside it and I'm going to bend this into about 60 degrees. So just with my thumb on the edge of the plier, I'm going to bend it to about here. Okay? And if you don't know what 60 degree is, let me show you this board. This is the board I use. These diagonal lines all come down to the bottom corner. This is 45 degrees. This is 30 degrees. This one is 60 degrees. They slice through each of these 1-inch squares. I don't want to move my camera because it'll be hard for me to reposition it, but this is the 60 degree line. You can watch me up here. So this is the 90 degree angle, and down here on my board, of course, the corner would have been 90 degrees. But on this square, this is 90 degrees, okay? Which means this point is 30 degrees and this point is 60 degrees. So I can align my wire to about there, and I can see that I'm about within 60 degrees. I'm a little shorter than that, but that's okay actually, because the stone is a little more narrow. So For 60 degrees, you kind of want to look like this a little bit. You know, maybe I should have said a little bit in from 60 degrees, but kind of like that. It's not quite 30 degrees though. You know, if I come up here to my 30 degree mark, it's bigger than that one. Okay, so it's closest to 60 degree, but a little bit sharper. Okay, so I'll just get my plier and I'm going to tap that corner a little bit and make sure that it's nice and straight. Okay, and then right here at the ends, at my very end of my marks here, I'm going to grip with my plier and I'm going to just turn that wire back to horizontal, and I'll do the same on this side. Just grip the wire and bend the wire back down to horizontal. You want to stay all on the same plane. Don't worry if it's a little bit off, you're okay. You can come down here on your measure, put the point on a vertical line. This one is horizontal, this one needs a little more bending. So there I go, and that's pretty good. Like I said, it doesn't need to be super perfect. This one could go a little out because we're going to distort it anyway once it goes to the back, and you'll understand that later. But so that's pretty good there. Okay, we'll start with this wire and we'll weave these wires on. We'll start with 26 inches of 28 gauge weaving wire. So that's 2 feet and 2 inches. And I'm just going to hold the first 1 inch down here, make one wrap, and then hold that tiny fragment. Maybe I made 2 wraps so that it doesn't travel while you wrap. And we're going to make 10 wraps right here. So there's 2. Let me change my camera focus a little bit. So there's 2 wraps. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 coils. Just manage your 2 feet of wire. I'm not on a wire bobbin, so, and don't worry if it's off a little bit from this edge, we can slide it a little bit later. Okay, so once you get 10 solid coils on this lower wire, this will be the lowest wire in the stack, you'll grab another wire and align that center with the center. That's pretty close. These 2 on the edges. And you'll hold on to that fragment because your coil is still going to spin. And you'll take one complete turn over that wire. You want to leave a little bit of a gap, so don't tighten it so much that you lose the gap there. You need to have a breath of space. Once you get one complete wrap around those 2 wires, we can pick up the next wire, or you can pick all 4 of them up at the same time, or hold all 4 of them at the same time if you want. So I'll pick up that one and I'll pick up this next one. It might be easier to just hold on to all 4 of them. Get them all lined up in their dots. So I've made one wrap over the 2 lower wires, and we'll call our wires 1, 2, 3, and the upper one being wire number 4. And I'm just going to make a small gap with my fingernails. We've wrapped wires 1 and 2, so now I'll come back up and I'll wrap all 3 wires, 1, 2, and 3. Pull back to tighten your weaving wire and then come down. You can use your back finger as a little landing pad. Okay, once I'm back down here, I'm going to come all the way up with a pre-bend I'll wrap around all 4 wires, pull back and pull down. Use your fingernail and you can scooch those close together. You can also use your fingernails and just keep the gap ahead of you, these spaces open. So go up. We're going to wrap wires 1, 2, and 3 on our way back down this set of wires, the base wires. Pull back to tighten and then pull down. Once we get this first segment done, it'll be easier on you because these spaces will be established by this tiny wire. Pre-bend up, go around base wires 1 and 2, pull back and then come down, push the weave over with your fingernail, and then make 10 single coils on this lower base wire, number 1. So there's 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I like to use my fingernails now and just kind of push these together so we have a nice tight weave, and I call this a segment. So this is 1. We're going to make 4 of them. So go up, wrap base wires 1 and 2, pull back to tighten, come down, go up and pre-bend to wrap base wires 1, 2, and 3, pull back and down, come up, wrap all 4 base wires, pull back and down, and then come back down the base wires by wrapping 1, 2, and 3, then wrap wires 1 and 2, and then do another 10 single coils on wire 1. Just like that. Before you tap them down, go ahead and make sure that you're right here at the edge of this bend. And they should still just slide nicely for you. Use your fingers. And then I like to just give a light and gentle tap. And then we'll do 2 more repeats. The rest of your base wires should remain nice and straight. Just coming out the back side. We're about to weave the opposite side soon. Make sure that everything's laying nicely against each other. And then go ahead and give a little tap with your pliers. And that looks pretty good. We can get rid of this first fragment by giving a little tension and making big circles until it breaks, or you can just use your cutter and cut it off. Leave this one on, We'll be using it later. So you'll cut a fresh piece, 26 inches long, of 28 gauge weaving wire, and we'll do the opposite side. Alright, so after 4 repeats, our wires might have gone out of alignment a little bit, like mine did here, and that's okay. You just be real patient. They still slide around a little bit, and you just line them back up, making sure that, you know, these are right here at the elbows of this bend, and then that's pretty good. This particular weave is reversible, so I can just turn my entire stack of base wires around, and it's the exact same weave on the opposite side, which means that I can just weave from here like I did the other side. Not all weaves are like that, so I like to use this one for that reason. So cut another 26 inches of 28 gauge weaving wire, and we'll just repeat 4 of these weaved segments on this side. Okay, so once we have it, all 4 repeats, I'll just tap all these peaks nice and flat. Make sure you don't push so much that you slip down into that crevice. I think I'm on the verge of that, so I'm just going to back it up a little bit. Okay, so just like that. And I'll just push this side together and make sure that everything is still nice and in alignment. I'll get rid of this leading wire, and I'll keep the longer one. Okay, so now we're going to make a bend. It's going to feel a little uncomfortable with this piece here, but it'll be all right. You just work patiently. There is no front or back side to the frame yet, so right here in the middle, I'm just going to turn it this way so I can work a little easier. Right here in the middle, you know, aligned with this and your center marks here, just scooch your wire if you need to. Take a nice flat plier. You'll get right beside those center marks, which should be centered to this point. And once you make this 90-degree bend, this piece is going to feel uncomfortable, but you'll just adjust for it, so don't worry about it. Just make sure that you get right there on the edge of those wires. Hold a nice firm grip. These are 3 18-gauge wires all at the same time, and then push and bend into a 90-degree, and then just let that do its thing. You'll see that it came up and kind of distorted into a little point here, and that's perfectly fine. We'll tap the sides right here, tap the sides right there, and then go ahead and push this so that it lays kind of flat towards the back, and that'll distort your wires up here a little bit, and that's okay. You just get down here on the board. Let me change my focus. And all you need to do is, I'm holding on to all these wires in this V point, and I'm just going to lay this down and get it flat. So my wires are horizontal here, I mean vertical here, and I've laid this one down towards the back. Let me fix the camera again. Okay, so just like that, and then it just takes a little bit of a push while you hold these other wires upright. Okay, just like that. And that should be a nice start to a back seat to your stone, so that you can see what it looks like back here. It's kind of like that. I don't worry about adjusting it until I take my wires up around the stone, but you just want to make sure it's fairly centered and that it's laying flat against the back of the cabochon, just like that. So you can even insert the cab, give it a little bit of a pressure, not too much, don't strain your stone. Put your point on an intersection of squares. Then you can put your rock in there. And you can see that this angle fits the front tip of my stone pretty well, and I can just give a little bit of a squeeze, not too much, and settle my stone down on that back wire flipper. Okay, just like that. Alright, so to get around the stone, I like to turn so that my stronger hand is working the wires, and then you'll get the tip on an intersection of squares. Make sure that your cabochon is fairly centered, and you can use the other lines to help you do that. About like that. Hold everything nicely. You're going to have to hold the stone, because once you take these bends, it wants to move the stone out of position, so just work patiently. Make sure that your stone stays in place, and just get this bend around it, and so that it crosses, you know, this line here, the top center, crosses the top center. It's a little bit squirrely to work with. Kind of looks like that. We can make some adjustments still, but the tip of your stone stays in the tip of the wires, and you just work it with your fingers so that you have a nice curve that matches the body of your stone. And it's okay if there's a millimeter or so of space. Kind of looks like this in the back. Okay. The two front wires, the peaks are this way because the two front wires we're going to take and, you know, scallop over the top of the stone. It might be hard to see, but you'll see we're going to bend them two to the back like this. Okay? So once you have your wires curving so that they cross at about the top center of the stone, you can take the two back wires right here at the weaves and make sure that the weaves are settled. By the way, they might have adjusted during all of this. Make sure your stone is seated. And you can take the two back wires and just, you know, I like to just put my fingernail in there and kind of part them a little bit. And right here, hold the whole thing in while you just create this little upward bend in them. With the wires against your stone and your stone seated in position, and you're eyeballing the center of this rock, you're just going to take these two down, kind of cross semi-diagonally. You know, it's a little bit diagonal there, but it kind of goes over the face of the stone. Just manage your weaving wire. Get it out of your way if it's in your way. Just pull this off to the side. So like this. And right there at the approximate center, just put my fingers up here. I want to brace up here at the top of the head of the stone. and just turn these wires. You want to try to be in the center or a little bit less so that the other one can meet it, but try to be center best you can. Just visualize down to the point here, and that's pretty good. I'm going to turn this over so you can see what's happening. And you'll just follow those wires all the way around and lay them down the back of the stone like this, right along the side of that point. What's most important is to keep your stone in place and to keep this shaped. Once you get them laying down, just push with your fingers and lay them all the way down against the back of the stone there. It might take a practice or two, okay? Just nice and clean like that. And then we'll repeat with the other side. So first get yourself all back into alignment. These two wires stay side by side the whole time. Okay, they don't cross each other or anything. Okay, so you're kind of like this. So you can get back down here on the board and put the point at a cross section of squares. Make sure that this is all nice and laying down and your stone is seated. And you can see that my curve is, just off center to the stone. That's about the center of the stone there, and that works out pretty well. While it's here, you're going to brace. Get these 4 wires back up on their sides if you need to. Don't let your stone shift out of its half of its harness now. And you'll just take this side now and shape it. Just like that. You can take the 2 back wires. So there's, more than one way to do this. You could have done these 2 wires first, but sometimes it's easier to move all 4 wires. You can do it however you please. And then we're going to have to get these 2 behind these. So you just make a quick flip, just like that. Make sure that the stone is still snuggled in the wires nicely. I like to just keep these along the sides. And then up here you can start your diagonal bend over the head of the stone and going back slightly. So you can kind of eyeball your center. Hold the sides in while you do this. Make sure nothing shifts. It's a little bit of a tricky hold. You could put tape around the whole thing if you want. Just work them side by side, kind of eyeball the center of the stone, and just make your curve and turn them down. Okay, just like that. And I've got one side a little bit higher than the other, and that's okay. I can make little adjustments. And then back here with this wire, I can just use a flat nose plier, tap it on its sides to get those cleaned up like that. I want to get that position so it's, bottom and fairly centered, and then you can just, with your hands, carefully work these wires. Don't pull them out of shape, but you just want to work them so that they are laying next to either side of that triangle flip. And that's your capture. Come back here to the front and just look to see that you're even, and that's pretty good. I'm a little bit high on this side, so I can adjust for that later, or I can make this side a little bit wider by opening it up, doing 1 wire at a time. Maybe I'll just try to make them a little bit wider. Trying to reposition those wires a little bit. And that's pretty good there. Okay, and we're going to cover some of that up too, so if yours isn't perfect, it's okay. Mine's not perfect, but it's great enough. And that looks very nice. You just work it carefully with your fingers and try to center these 2 bends the best that you can. It doesn't have to be exact. we can make small adjustments once we weave it all together in the back. Just lay everything down on a nice cross of squares. Try to get the top of your stone centered with the horizontal line, and give everything a nice push and squeeze with your fingers. Make sure to settle all these wires inward and that everything's up against the sides of your stone, and that these points are kind of coming down and forward just by pushing on them a little bit. And that, you know, these should be over the shoulders of your stone, and will make, again, it'll get tighter as we go. If your points are off a little bit, you can make small taps with the plier. Mine's off a little bit, so I'm just going to tap them carefully. Try to be careful not to make any plier marks. Okay, and that's pretty good. All right, so with the two wires up here now, we're going to bring them so that they cross each other. Just clean them up a little bit if you need to. Tap them so that they're sitting side by side and straight. And we'll just crisscross them here at the top. Just bend them together. Keep the center of your stone in focus. Just work this down, these two wires down side by side, so they're kind of vertical. You know, they're sitting on top of each other like this. Just work them down until you get to about 1/4 of an inch above your stone there, and that your crisscross is top center, and that's pretty good. I have a wire I keep colliding with right here. Okay, so once you're in position here, you can take your plier, come to the sides, and just hold and rotate until they're flat and side by side. Come to this side and just hold and rotate those two wires nice and flat. Just make small adjustments if you have to, so they're crisscrossing now flat. This space should be about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little longer than 1/4 of an inch. So you can squeeze them together and make it a little tighter, and this will cinch everything up. Somehow my thing got shifted up here. I'm going to have to fix that later. So just go like this, and that's about 1/4 of an inch. And you can either mark them, or you can just, you know, overextend them a little bit, so when they bounce back, they're at about 1/4 of an inch, and they hold. They stay in place like that. We'll flip the bottom. This is just like the earrings. We're going to flip the bottom one up and back onto itself without moving the other wire, and this crisscrosses bottom center. So I'll just hold down here. I put my plier below these two wires up top, right about where I think these two need to bend. So right about there. And I'll just push with my fingers into a sharp 90 degrees. Whoops. Hold tight those pliers. Bend these two wires together up and right over themselves. Just like that. Hold on to the extending length of wire, and with your pliers ease these two wires closed. Do one wire at a time and squeeze them until they close down. Make small adjustments if you need to get them back together like that, just like that. Once you get these down to meet the other wires, then get on there and squeeze tightly but with control, almost as if you want to dent those wires so they really stay in place. And then come to the outside. Since we'll create a point a little bit longer for some elegance, I'll just come to the outside of that bend. Hold tight with your plier. Take a 90-degree bend with your thumb in these wires. Bend them straight over themselves. back down onto themselves like that. Hold on to the leading wires. Use your plier and get a controlled squeeze. Whoop, not too much like I just did. A real controlled squeeze until the whole thing meets on all 4 of these wires. Then come and hold these 2 sideways. Hold these 2 leading wires and just carefully bend these 2 at the very tips into a nice curve, pointing down. Once you get that curved down, get right here with your plier on all 4 wires at that intersection. Squeeze, not too hard, but a little bit, and it brings the wires all together and in a little bit. You can give a nice graceful bend there. And take these wires into a more elegant bend there. And you have just that cute little turnout at the bottom. I'm going to have a little sanding to do right there, no big deal. So it kind of looks like a little tulip on its way to blooming maybe. So it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. It looks beautiful. And I have 2 wires that are living here that I can use to, you know, if I feel like I need to grab this, or if I want to weave it all, right? And I could do that if I wanted to weave these 2 wires, and I might. But before I do these 2 wires, I'm leaving my weaving wires down here. I'm going to take the wires from the back and we're going to weave all of this together. Just with my fingers, I'll try to center that out a little bit better. That looks pretty good. So let's get 2 feet of 28 gauge weaving wire. All right. So I'm just going to leave these 2 weaving wires pointed down there for use for later. I've got a fresh 2 feet of 28 gauge weaving wire, and I'll just anchor the wire back here, first 1 inch. I'll make one quick wrap around these wires up here where I can get it under control, and then just slide it down here to where I want it to be. Just get it nice and anchored. Then you can hold on to that little fragment while you work. And I'm going to do a figure 8 weave. So after I've got a 360 around these pair of wires, I'm going to cross over, go underneath the opposite pair, and do a 360 around them. Come back across and underneath, do a complete 360 around them, and repeat this until you reach the tip of that bend. Sometimes you get hooked in that little coil right there, so just be careful about working right there. And I like to actually go over this tip a few times to just keep it anchored to the stone so it's, there's no potential catch, no potential of it catching later. So you can do what you'd like, but I'm going to do a few more repeats and just go over the tip of that wire. All right, just like that. And maybe I'll do one or two more, and then we'll take the remainder of this wire and wrap it'll be about 8 or 10 times until we get to about a millimeter, just before the edge of the stone. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple more of these. And then right here, I'm going to start to, I have about 7 or 8 inches of wire left, and I'm just going to sneak through the little corner right there and make single coil wraps around all 3 of these, about 10 repeats. I think this one's number 8. Nine. It'd be easier if I wasn't underneath the camera here, so if it looks like I'm struggling, it's just because I'm trying to stay upright to the camera. It'll be a lot easier on you when you're weaving closer to your body. And that one is number 10. So that leaves me, just a couple of millimeter from the edge of the stone. And I don't have enough on this probably to make 10 on the other side, but I'm just going to use what I've got left over and stretch across. If you're watching ahead, maybe you take 2.5 feet just so you have a little more comfort room. I'm adjusting these wires so that they're nice and close, making sure that everything is flat on the back of my stone. And I'm going to wrap on this side 10 times. I'll start by going underneath and crossing over. It'll be easier for me to go in this direction. Use that little shoulder. Or if there's room, that you can get underneath all of it here, you can do that. I'm probably going to run out just before I reach 10, but you never know, I might just make it. 3 more. Ooh, I'm going to be almost exact. So yeah, you'll want to give yourself about 26 inches instead of 24 for this. So that was 9 and this one is 10. Ooh, I think. All right. I barely made it, you guys, with an inch to spare here and an inch to spare at the bottom. So give yourself 26 inches instead of 24 on this back wire for a little more comfort space. So I'll just break them off and we have a beautiful clean back and we have a full capture to the stone. The front wires, you know, should just be at the side edges, and this is 18 gauge, so your stone should be pretty secure, but if it still feels like it's going to pop out a little bit, don't worry, because we can still make adjustments and tighten things up. We're not fully done yet. Alright, so from here I like to take these 2 upper wires down first. So you can either do it facing your cabochon or you can do it facing the back. I tend to like to face the front so that I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to start by putting the pad of my finger right here. We're going to just make what, you know, is kind of like a heart, half a heart shape. You can go out as far as you want, but I'm going to go, you know, just out just a little bit from my stone with maybe 3 millimeter, because this one will be the second scallop that comes from the bottom. So I'm going to hold it right here at the base of those wraps and let the wire curve. So I'm holding it right here just at the base of those wraps so that wire can curve. And then once I get it curved out, I can put my finger here and a little landing pad and help it curve. And then you kind of got to bow the wire a little bit, right? Let it curve and become elegant right here instead of pulling it straight. And I'm bending nice and flat, coming towards the back, and I'm just going to cross right over that intersection, making sure that everything is on a nice flat plane here. The back, just like that. And I'll try to make the other side similar, but before I go there, right here, I'm going to, right about where this wrap wire is, just beyond it, I'll put my thumb there and make a curve down. Don't push, don't pull, to take, you know, don't take your beautiful curve out of shape, just bend it down. Make a nice gentle curve down and off to the side. You can catch it with the weaving wire underneath. Just make sure it's all laying nice and flat. And then make a couple of wraps so that basically it lives right there above the 2 wires below it. And right up against the stone there. Okay? So it looks just like that. And it's tied on right there. If you need to lay this down and give little taps to make sure that's laying flat, you can do that. And then we'll just leave this weaving wire here and we'll repeat with this one. So make sure everything's nice and straight first. Put your fingers right here and just bend these 2 wires out. And then use the pad of your finger. Don't collide with these 2 front wires. Stay behind them when you work. Just work slowly. You can use whichever pad of your finger works for you. And try to make it similar to that side. Just turn them so that they're nice and flat. . and go behind your pendant and just cross over the back center. Just like that. That's pretty close to the other side. I'm pretty happy with that. And then right down here, right where your coil ends and your weaving wire, if you want to grab it first, you can do that. So just lay it down, you know, against those wires below it, the two wires, and then grab it with your weaving wire once. And just wrap twice. And we'll wrap it some more. Well, actually, if you want to do that first, it might be easier for you. So I wrapped it twice. There's a bar right underneath it. So try to catch those two wires a couple of times to wrap this one in place. There's one. There's two of them. And then I'll just anchor it by going back around these two one time. Okay, just like that. And then you, from here, keep your finger right here and turn these two down and curved off the pendant. Just like that. We'll go back to the other side and cinch it up. So we only anchored it by wrapping those two. That's really, you need to be able to anchor to the two wires below it too. So you can do this before you make these curvy bends downward. But since I did it ahead of time, I'll just go back and take my wire through there and give it a couple of sturdy wraps, just like I did the other side. Pull nice and tight so that it really sits there. Not so tight that you break your 28 gauge though. How many wraps did I do over here? 2. So I did 2 over here, and that ties it down pretty well. And then you can anchor this by going back around these two wires right here. So there we go. And then you could have turned your wires down and that might have helped you a little bit. Okay, so we're all tied off there. That looks pretty good. Lay everything down and just give nice love taps, making sure that everything lays nice and flat. So we kind of look like this. And now with the two front ones here, if you want to go ahead, you know, while you have this weaving wire on and weave a little bit, you can, so that you have some weave design here in the front. Why don't we go ahead and do that? We can take this one. They're just wrapped on, so I'll just make a little bit of a space between them. And I'll do a 360 completely around the bottom wire. Pre-bend up, do a complete 360 around the top wire, use your fingernails and get them really anchored there. Go up, go around both of them and get to the back side, make sure they're really anchored. Go up, do a 360 around the bottom one, up and across, and do a 360 around the top one, which leaves you on the back side of it, up and 360 around the bottom one. Just keep your fingernails there. By the time it's visible, it should be clean. It's just getting started right there. 360 around the top. Come down behind it, go up and do a 360 around the lower wire. Come up the front, do a 360 around the top wire, which leaves you on the back. Come down, do a 360 on the bottom wire, which leaves you in the front. Come up and do a 360 on the top wire, which leaves you on the back. Do a 360 on the lower wire. And we'll just do this until you get, just to about the tip of the pendant right there, the bottom tip of the pendant. Just keep these two wires close together. That's about good right there. I'm going to stop right there and we'll catch the other side up. Just leave your weaving wire on so we can see it kind of down there like that. All right, and we'll do the same with the opposite wire. We'll weave on these two wires until we reach about the bottom tip. You can do that in whichever direction is more comfortable to you. So complete 360 around the bottom. This is the exact same pattern as the other side. Up and across. Complete 360 around that one, which leaves me behind it. Complete 360 around the bottom one, which leaves me in front of it. You can just do this nice swaying motion as well. Just remember where you are in your pattern. I think most of you, unless you're new to wire weaving, probably know this pattern. I just call it 1/1, but I think it's called something else, modified sumac maybe. So there goes that. If you care to weave these two front wires, you can. You can just get fresh pieces of weaving wire and anchor yourself right here and weave. And I might do that because I'm really digging how this looks. So rather than having bare wire, I might go ahead and weave these two. So I'll take another 2 feet of 28 gauge and I'll weave these two in the same pattern, or you can do a different pattern if you want. Right, so I have a fresh piece of 28 gauge weaving wire and it's 2 feet long. I'm going to keep these little fragments on here just in case I need to make a few extra stitches later on. So I'll start weaving these two wires, probably I would say from here to about, it's about 1.25 inches or so. So I'll anchor my wire. I'm going to do this same weave as I did below. So I'll anchor the wire right here between the two base wires. And I'll get right to about where they cross over each other here. And I'll have a 360 there for the anchor, so then I'll come over the top one. Keep your thumb right there so that you can brace. Get it right there. Come all the way around. Do a complete 360 around the bottom wire. Come up the front. Complete 360 around the top wire, which leaves you on the back. Do a complete 360 around the front wire. Hang on to this little fragment here so it stays right here in this spot and doesn't travel up. And just weave until you get about a solid 1.25 inches, and then we'll start to curve it back and see how much more weave we need. Once I get a little distance, I'm just going to use my plier to help me gently squeeze these together. It's a tight spot right there, so if your fingers can't get in there, then you can use your plier. And I just keep pushing it back so that it sits right here at this intersection. Keep that space consistent and keep weaving until you get your distance. So that's pretty good there. And I'm about middle of the pendant here where I've stopped weaving. And that's kind of where I'm aiming for. So right here, I'm going to take my fingers and just bend a beautiful curve a little bit lower than the first one and come behind the pendant. Kind of on the same idea as the first curves you made. Once you get it bent, you can hold it right there. The weave makes it really easy for you. And you can start to curve it down and bring it right next to the previous one that we left there. Just like that. So you're kind of swooping to this side and you're about like that. We need to weave just a little bit more if you want the weave to go all the way back there. I'm out of wire, so I did need those 4 extra inches, so I think I'm going to tell you to cut 26 consistently throughout everything. So I'm going to just add a little bit of wire and weave that bit, I've decided, because I like the way it looks weaved all the way up here. About that, I'm back. Was I unfurled these two a little bit since they weren't tied down yet. I gave myself another 4 inches and I just continue to weave right where I'm at. So why don't you guys, instead of cutting 24 inches, if you're watching this ahead, I hope you'll notice in the instructions, regardless of what I say, that you're better off to cut about 26 or 27 inches right here, depending on how far out you make this curve. Alright, so now I'll just continue to bend these back down the back here and right into that little space right there. And that's pretty good. Just break that weave off right there. You know, if you go 3 feet, then you can probably go all the way down to here. Depends on how much you want to weave, but for time's sake, I'm just going to stop right there and do that. So I'll cut these 2 away. Now you can cut, like I said, 28 inches, 27 inches, somewhere in there, and do these opposite wires right here, and repeat this same pattern and bring it to the back when you reach the weave to here, and then just drop those 2 wires down to this side instead of this side. Just make sure everything's sitting nice and flat on a nice plane there. Okay, just like that. And we'll go ahead and do that on this side now. So to do this opposite side, I've cut a fresh piece of 28 gauge weaving wire at 3 feet long. I decided I'll just use the continuation of the wire to weave them together rather than cut another length. So I'll anchor myself on these 2 wires by coming between them with an inch here, and I'll just come right to as close to that intersection as I can get, and I'll continue to weave this for about 1.25 inches. You do yours, and I will see you when we get to about here. Video editing, I did my 1.25 inches here. I can already see it's going to be a little bit short, so why don't we do 1.5 inches? I guess my measures are a little bit off today, but that's how it goes with weaving. Sometimes I didn't actually anticipate to weave this piece fully. I was going to leave these bare wires, but I really love how it looks, so I threw this in kind of ad lib. But with weaving, we can always add wires, so if we're a little bit short, it's okay. Alright, so that's about maybe 1.5 inches, and I'm just going to push all this back, make it nice and beautiful, and I'll start to bend it right about halfway down my pendant, just like I did the other side. This is what I mean by bowing it a little bit. You have to kind of go back and forth and kind of bubble it out a little bit. When you get it bent to your liking, curved to your liking, just hold it in place right there. Yeah, I'll have to weave a little bit more. So before I go all the way down, I'll just stop right here and weave another 1/4 inch. Once you get past the visible spot in the front, you could start to stretch that weave a little bit if you want to. You don't have to weave so close and tightly, only on the visible, only on the visible parts. So I could curve this down, get these wires lined up together in the center of my pendant here, and I'll start making some real long stretch wraps here, what I call stretch wraps, just to get myself to the position where I need to be. You could fully weave that if you want, but for the sake of time in this video, I'm just going to do it this way. And I'll get these 2 right on top of the previous weave and centered. And I'll do a figure 8 weave. Keep these in pairs side by side, and I'll just do a figure 8 weave to stitch these 2 together, these pairs. With the figure 8 weave, you have to do that extra, at least one extra wrap so that the weave doesn't slide. I think I did about 7 repeats there. Goes 8. And I think I'll stop with that one. 9. Okay, so about like that. And everything should be laying nice and flat. That looks pretty good. And when I look at it in the front, all I should see is solid weave on both sides. And then I've got those 2 wires coming down here for design if I want them. Alright, and you can just use your fingernails and kind of push these together and up. Squeeze everything and make sure it's flat. You can lay this down on the board and just give gentle love taps to everything and settle everything down. Alright, that's pretty good. Got one a little taller than the other, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. It's kind of like a flower. Alright, so I've got all these wires down here now. I'm going to start to clean some things up here. I'll get rid of this leading wires, these 2 little fragments up here. I already got rid of that other one. And then I'm left with the 2 that are on the side and the one that's in the center. Okay? I'm going to turn these 2 up and onto the frame, the 2 outer pair. And in order to do that, I'm just going to gently lift this up with my finger. I don't want to use my pliers on that weave because I don't want to crush it. Let me do it this way. And I'll just take these 2 and kind of fold them over into a diagonal, or a little bit of a diagonal into the stone there, just like that. Hold it right here where it comes over. Just make it not tight, but snug. If you can do it, you can take a plier and just give a gentle squeeze right there if you need to. Hold it right here to keep it going inward. And you can work 1 wire at a time. Take this outer wire and make a nice downward curve just below the stone. Follow it with this one, but just above it a little bit. Make sure that those are laying nice like that, just kind of off to the side there. I'm going to take this one, the short one, and I'll cut it right about at the weave's edge. There's probably 3/4 of an inch. I'll get my round nose pliers. Grab the tip of that. Just do the best you can. I'm balancing my plier on my little finger down here. And just turn it into a nice, cute downward spiral like that. Adorable. And then with this one, cut it off, I guess right about here, about 2 or 3 millimeter off the edge of the pendant. That's probably a total of 1.25 inches, maybe an inch, hard to tell on the curve. But you can just eyeball yours. You can always take it back or trim it more. I'm going to hold my plier palm up and give a back turn on this. Just get the turn going and then get to the tips. And get a nice back spiral going that's elegant. There we go. Beautiful. We can take those out and hammer them if you want to. That's optional. I'm not sure if I'm going to. If you munch the tips at all, you can take your fine cutter and just snip the very, very tip of it off. And then come in with the flat plier and shape it up a little bit more very carefully like that. Okay, that's gorgeous. Now we'll do the other side. Just manage these weaving wires. Make sure your weaves are pushed up. Just use your finger and bend that weave all the way up so that your wires go across your pendant kind of diagonally like that. You can take a plier and very carefully brace front and back and squeeze. Make sure you get both wires flat. You don't have to kill it, just give it a little squeeze. Hold it right here so it stays inward. And I'm using kind of the body of the stone there. Just turn this out nicely. It doesn't have to be the same as the other side, but you can get it similar if you want to. And just follow it up with this one. Let's go ahead and cut this one right here at the edge of the pendant. Take the round nose plier, palm up. Grip the tip of that. I'm just holding it here so it doesn't move, and I've got leverage on the wire. So I can make my bend without it pulling out. I'll have to cut that back slightly. And then this one, I'm going to cut it out here a couple of millimeters beyond the edge of the pendant. Get my plier on it. Start a bend. Go ahead and take that inward and into the pendant. These are a little bit longer, and that's fine. I don't mind that. Just kind of have them sloping off the side a little bit. Push this one up and a little closer together. Kind of munch the tip there a little bit, so take my flush cutter with the flat side up and I'll get the very tip of that cut. That's beautiful. You've got a nice little spot there for an additional gemstone, or in our case I'm going to put a copper bead ball there. That's very pretty. We also have these additional wires back here that we can do, you know, more design down here with, more curly work, or some curly work in the back and just give it some depth. And I think that's what I'm going to do because I don't want to bring anything else to the front. I'm going to tie on that bead ball first and see how I feel about that. Make sure that these are all laying nicely. The bead ball will help to cinch those up together, and that's how we're going to use these guys right here. That should still be on your pendant. Let's take a little squeeze right here. Get some flat nose pliers and get to both edges of these and just the backs of them here. Give a nice squeeze inward. Don't crush, you know, don't destroy. Just squeeze with control. Kind of push those outward a little bit. Okay, just like that. That's pretty good. So now I'll take these two wires here. I'm just going to go ahead and do 3 solid wraps. Maybe 5. I think I'm going to do 5 solid wraps and get myself kind of up into this area a little bit more so we can use it for a bead. So that's 1, there goes 2, 3, 4, 5. maybe I'll do 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think that that's be a better stretch. So I'm going to do 10 wraps right there. Do yours according to you. You might have given more weave than I did. I'll just leave that there. I'll wrap these 10 times. There's 10 wraps. So I'll come in between them with the wire after I get my wraps done. You hear Jolene in the background, silly little, silliest girl. And then I'll do this one. I'm going to just separate them slightly so I can get between them, so that your wires are going both in this, center direction and inward. Okay? We can adjust our little curls here in a minute. So I'll get a 6mm copper bead ball, or you can get, any kind of bead that you would prefer or love to put into that spot that accents your stone. So I've got a 6mm copper bead ball here. I think it's 6mm. Oh, just let it get caught in there. Might be a 7mm. 6 is probably what it is. Find one that fits the space that you have. And then I'm going to use these 2 wires. The hole is big enough, obviously, that the wires can go through what I call, kitty cat whiskers. So I'll just put one side in, and then I'll thread the other side in. Pull the open ends and pull the bead all the way down so that it reaches. And then pull tightly so that the wires come together and there isn't any slack. Hold the bead in place right there and give a pull and come behind both of these base wires. Just like that. Hold the bead in place right here. Give this side a nice pull. Get all the slack out. And then come behind these curly base wires here. So you can get a nice close tie. Got a little bubble there. It's okay. Try to disguise it. Ooh, that'll drive me nuts. And then I'll just go around both of them one more time. Try to get the cleanest wrap that you can get. Try not to cross over your previous wrap or leave a little bubble like I did. Just like that. Go one more time and see if I love this. And my wire's a little bit crunchy. You could always use a fresh piece of wire and tie on a ball or a bead there as well. I probably might have done that, but I'm just trying to use the ends of what I have. So to end this, I'll do a couple of wraps around this single curl, and then I'll just give a little tension and do big circles until it breaks, or you can take your cutter, come way in there and give a nice little cut, and if you need to, you can tap it with the plier. And then just readjust your curls on this side, lay them back down so that they kind of slope off. That's beautiful. And then we'll do this side. We'll take the wire from here, make sure you're not crossing over that previous one. We'll do a couple of wraps around both of these. And then we'll do a couple of wraps around this single one. And then right here, just give a little tension and make big circles until it breaks. Very pretty. Okay, I love that. And then we have these 4 right here. I might take one more up and just break the symmetry a little bit and add one more to one of these sides, and or a little spiral or something there, whatever you please. Or you can take 2 of these up. So I've got 2. Let me see what I do here. I'm kind of ad-libbing now. So I'll just bend these out a little bit to each side of that cute point. I will take one of these up. Take the inside one here and just flip it right over this frame. Cause a curve in it. If you need to, you can get a plier and hold on to it right there so that you can get a closer bend on it. Just come up and onto the frame. Leave this one out to the side. Come this way on it. Get to the front and back of the wire with the plier and just squeeze. Squeeze. Gently squeeze. And close it down a little bit. Get it laying against your pendant frame. Work carefully and patiently so that you don't scratch and scuff your wire. And then take it from the side and just turn it out slightly. Give it a little bit of elegance, just like that. I'm going to let this wire kind of sweep over this intersection right here. Just use your fingers. And I'm just going to add another little curl right in here. I don't think I'm going to cut anything off except just the very tip of it. That might be 2 inches. Whatever was left at the end of the wire there. And we'll see what I come up with. So we'll make a nice curl. Try to stay off your stone. with your plier. Kind of do something like that. Meh. Take it a little bit lower. Do something like that. I'm going to trim out some of it here in the middle. Open it up a little bit. I like that better. I'll have to tie it down. That just gives me a extra little design in the front. If you want to go crazy, you can do another little one with this guy. I've got a little short one over here. I'm not sure what you've got, but take it up a little taller. Take it up a little higher. Get a plier on it, the front and the back of it. Squeeze. Gently tighten it up there. Oh. You can handle it by the back, that's better. Grab it by the back and give it a little out turn. Give it some elegance and then kind of pinch it right there. That's pretty good. I'll snip it. Ooh, that might have been too short, you guys. See what happens. Might have to make a real tight turn right here. I don't even think I have enough. I'm not sure I love that now that I cut it too short. Let me see if I turn it out some. I can save it. Do I love that? Not sure. Because it wasn't what I planned, but I could live with it. I'm going to pinch right here and bring these two together slightly. Tap down, tap down. I'm not sure I love that. I think it's gotten all too curly for me. I can leave it, and then I can stitch a little bit right here, or weave a little bit right there if I want to. I can also just cut them off, right? That's the beauty part of this. I can take them all the way back to here, cut them and just turn them up and eliminate them down there. So you can always do this beautiful experimenting and then, you know, see how much design you actually want. And then if it's too much, you can always take it off. See, I've got 2 more wires, and I could take them to the back and do, you know, some back designs here just to give some depth. So I'll turn this straight up into a little, almost a vertical, but a diagonal here along the side of my pendant. Just press it flat to the back, and then I can make a little spiral there, or a spiral, you know, a little bit taller. Of course, these things you'd have to tie off, but it does give a little bit of dimension to the pendant. Just take that and start my curl. Do a nice spiral and kind of leave it living right there. And it doesn't add too much because I have all this other business in the front, but you can kind of see it right there in the back. It's just a nice way to end, you know, these back wires rather than just nubbing them off somewhere. But you could just do them tight, because this also adds a little bit of work in that they have to be tied down. So I'll turn it up like that. If I left all that length on there, I could make more of a curl, And I'll show you how to actually probably cut these off at the end of the... So more like this, a little more substantial. That way when you look at it in the front, you can kind of, you know, see some back design there. Again, it's not much, but it's just another little added layer of dimension. You know, of course, you'd have to stitch that down, so it's also, you know, a couple of little bits of extra work. Had we had, you know, some wire right here, we could have done it right there as well. And it leaves a beautiful back to the pendant, which could have also been the front. You know, you can design all this in the front as well. Okay, so I've decided I don't like these 2 extra curls right here. I think that gets a little too busy for me, so I'm going to take them off before I tie anything down. So I'm going to pull them back, put my finger there and just unbend it. It starts from right in here, and take this one up and push it back. If you love yours, keep yours. You know, for me, I'm just going to show you how to end these 2 wires here. And I still have this little weaving wire here for my probably just personal security. You could break it off. I don't think we need it anymore. Alright, so we'll bend these 2 up. I'm going to just cut them off, leaving about 1/2 inch. Take your round nose plier. Well, first let's take our flats. Straighten it out just to keep it clean and neat. Just tap all the way around. Straighten it out. And then you can take, I don't want it to necessarily show down there, so I'm going to take this plier and just curve it up and push it over so it lays next to that other one, kind of diagonally. So bring it up and then just, so that's kind of a soft 90 degree, and then just push it over to the left. And from here you can take your round nose plier, just make a very sharp curl downward and into the armpit of the pendant right there. Just like that on both of them. And then with these also, if you didn't want those in the back like that, you can terminate them the same way. Cut them so that they'll go nicely right next to the other ones. Whoop, that one got away from me. And then I'm just going to use my round nose plier, take a downward curve, and tuck that wire right into there. We'll tap all that down as well. This one the same. Make a downward curve and grab it at the curve and turn it some more. And then you can get your flat nose pliers to help you, or your chain nose pliers to help you. Just tap those flat. And nicely into those spaces right there. Well, I could have cut them a little shorter. You can still do that, but that looks nice from the back. Tap all 4 of them. That's pretty good. It's a very nice, clean ending to that pendant. Just lay it down and take the softness of your plier. Give a little push and a little push. Just settle all that. That's beautiful. For these, you can just push them inward. Oh, there's Joey in the background. Just make sure that they're all kind of sloping down and inward so that there's nothing to snag on the pendant. I might push this one inward just a little bit more so that it kind of rides over the stone a little bit. If you need help laying them down a little bit more, you can take a very fine plier, go underneath them in the back, like right here. Just get your plier there and give upward pressure while you give downward pressure to the curly point of it, or the curly front of it. And that helps it to lay down. Just work with your fingers until you feel like yours are where you want them to be and that they're beautiful. You can burnish them and make them harder if you feel like you need to. I feel like I want to curve this one inward just a little bit more. Take this, Joey, and take this back a little bit. That's pretty good there. All right, so far that's beautiful. And I've got one more piece of wire. All right, so I'll take a little break and tend to my beautiful dog. I'll be right back for the last wire. Okay, so if you feel like you need to stitch these, you know, you could right here one, or right here one. I don't feel like they're going to go anywhere, so I'm going to leave them. And in the live stream version, I think I'm going to show you the one without the weave as well, so we'll have two different versions. So anyway, we're going to use one more wire. We're going to use 6 inches of 18 gauge round soft wire. So let me get 6 inches here. So this is 18 gauge round soft wire at 6 inches. And I'm just going to find the approximate middle with my fingers. And I'm going to make a curve that goes right around the top of this. So just bend your wire in half with the soft curve, make the ends meet just like that. Get a nice even curve up here. You could do that with a dowel as well. And go ahead and, so once you get your curve done, we're just going to pass the wires from the front to the back, just like this. Start to slope them down. Kind of want this arc to be right over the top, but very close to these edges. So you can work this a little more narrow. Just going to work this a little bit more narrow by pushing it together here softly, giving some, holding it there, but giving it a little bit of tension right here. So it just worked a little bit closer. And I'll pass it from the front to the back, and I'll just position it and shape it until I love it, and that's about where I want it right there. So we kind of want it to look like that. Okay, and we're going to bend these up and catch the wires right up there. So you can either mark it or you can just eyeball it. So once I get it here, the wires are kind of pointed to the back, so hold them down. Get that edge right there. and then push this back a little bit to create a slight back bend. Bring that down a little bit. Once you get it looking the way you want it to be, right about there, I'm going to take my plier and just make a bend up in the back. Just hold on to it right here. Could have also done this ahead of time and off of the pendant and made a hook to come through here. I can show us that in live stream as well, but sometimes it's easier to do it this way. When you get the one side, it's not completely closed, but just holding on nicely. I'll just hold it there, and I'll shape this other side. Hold it like this, and then just take this other side and create a bend going up. So it's kind of like a hook. Looks just like that. Now once you get a little closer, come back here to the back and just fiddle the wires. Check the front, make sure that that looks the way you want it to. Then we'll tighten it up back here. Hold those two wires and just get a plier to the front and back of this wire and squeeze. You're not killing it just yet. You're just squeezing it to get it closed. And then on this side the same. Squeeze to get it closed. We'll shape it some more once we get these tied on. But then go ahead and hold up here. Bring this all the way to the front. Get another nice squeeze on it right there. Do the same for this side. Just get it right at that edge. Hold on to this nice curve. And bring that wire all the way around and down. Use your plier to help you cinch it closed. Just work a little at a time. And then we're going to cut it off so that we have about 1/2 inch. And that'll help you get through this little spot. So you can get your fine pliers on it. Just turn it back, get the curve going, tap it on top. This is thick 18 gauge, so. And then I'm going to cut it off, leaving just a couple of millimeters so that when I bend it back, that cut will live in the back there and not actually peek back out the front. Get your plier on it, face the cut, and then just tap it down so it lives kind of midway. Just like that, nice and clean. And on this side, I'll do the same. I'll get my very fine plier, get the wire going to the back side, hold on to this bit right here. Just carefully work it around. Let your plier help you. And when you get it back there, cut it, leaving just about 1 millimeter so that when you tighten it up, the cut lives in the back and not in the front, anywhere to be seen. And that's beautiful. I like that single wire up there. It kind of completes the, flowery pattern of this. From here we can do some maintenance and tightening up and some little tweaks here and there if we need to. So first thing I'm going to do is just make a nice squeeze on both sides of this wire to make sure it's laying flat. If I need to make any little adjustments up there, I can take the edge of my plier and just tap these tips right here. If you need to. I can take my nylon jaw and get my nylon jaw out, lay the pendant down, and if you need to squeeze any of this, you can get to both sides of it. Hold on to everything, don't slip, don't make drastic moves, don't wreck your weave, and just do a little squeezing. Use the edge of your plier and snuggle things down if you need to. Come up here and do little love taps along here if you need to. Tap along the top wire and give that some pressure squeezing to harden it a little bit. And then we'll just go through and burnish a few things. So with the edge of the tooth of your round nose plier that's nice and clean, go ahead and just scrape on some of these design elements, like right here, where I want to harden them a little bit. Just harden it up by going back and forth. You can kind of see the wires getting a little bit shiny. It's basically just scraping smooth metal on metal. You could also take your flat nose pliers and do some compression on these. We could have also certainly hammered that, but we didn't do any hammering in this one. I'll show us in live stream how to do bare wires down here and how to hammer these elements out. Okay, so that'll give us something new to do in live stream as well, but for now you have a new pattern. This is Mila. She's beautiful, elegant, and is a nice match to those cute little earrings that we did called Geneva. And I have one that's another pendant here without all of the weaving down there, so you can see alternately what you can do. And I could have done that a little better, but to give some more design, I just added some more wires, so you can get really fancy with it. If you prefer something like this, we can do something like this in live stream. I think that in live stream it'll be better so that we won't have so much weaving time in that, but now you have this pattern that you can do this one with the weave, and then we'll do this one in live stream. Okay, you guys? Alright, so our final step is to add some chain to this beautiful piece. So here's the chain that I have. It's 20 inches of copper cable chain. To make my jump rings, I'm just going to use my step plier. And I won't make them too big. I'll come here to, I think this is the 4 millimeter. And I'll just start making tight little rings around that dowel. And then I'll just use my cutter and I'll cut through each of these rings. Try to cut only one at a time. If you tend to try to cut through all of them, it doesn't usually work very good. And I usually take the 2 center rings because those are the 2 tightest rings out of 4. When you do this and you use your flush cutter, you always have one side of the ring that has a point. So I like to take the flush side of the cutter and just cut the very tip of the ring off. Just barely, just cut that point off. So that little point right there, you're going to cut it right at its edge right there, so that you don't alter the size of the ring. Be careful for those little shards and make sure they land on your cutting board here, just like that. And then you'll take your plier, open the ring up, insert the ring into here, close it back up, or you can buy pre-made jump rings that have been, you know, a saw was used. So if you feel anything, then you'll just sand that little top. This is a good place for these sanding sticks. Nice and rigid. A couple of times over that jump ring, and then you don't feel anything. That's that. We'll add the second one. Open it sideways like a scissor, put it through here and close it up again. Get those two ends to meet. Tap very lightly, squeeze, and then give a little sanding there so that you don't feel anything. And then you can put a chain through that. You would have to disconnect probably the ring at the end and then put it back on, and you could float your chain through here. The other way you could do it is to dedicate the chain to those two rings. So how I do that is I align these up here. I find the bottom center link, which is that one. I cut it away. And break the chain in half evenly. Then you can take each of your jump rings, obviously, and insert the chain, either using the jump rings that you made or some smaller ones. Well, my jump ring diameter is too big, so I'll use two pre-made jump rings that are 22 gauge and about 4 millimeter. Open that up, put it through one end of my chain, and I'll hook the jump ring onto my piece, close it up, even if you get pre-made ones, you know, I always just double check to make sure that I don't feel anything right there. Give a little sanding if you do. second one on. Sometimes these jump rings are misaligned, so then you got to get 2 pliers and fiddle them a little closer into shape. That's pretty good. So now when you wear this, you have a dedicated chain that hangs from the top of this pendant like this. And that's not too bad. You could also hook a bail up here if you want to. Something like this. This is a little more unique and different. And we could also add some bead balls and cutie up the chain quite a bit too. But I hope that this gives you a nice technique for capturing some of your stones in another Claudia kind of fashion. Just a little frillier and fun for upcoming holidays as well. As an alternative, you could also hook it on to the one lower, and then it would hang more like this style. And that's pretty cute too. That swings and lays pretty well. Okay. Woo! And here's what this beautiful piece looks like after we put patina and polish on it. It's gorgeous. Alright you guys, that is the final. And again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and or show me your beautiful creation if you make one of these. Thanks again for being here. I'll see you next time. Much love.